Greetings my little guzzlers. We're going to make ourselves some buns, and these are Norwegian buns. They're cardamom flavoured buns, soft, almost like puffy buns if you like. They are Boller or Boller, don't know how you pronounce it, B-O-L-L-E-R, which the French have got their croissant, the Norwegian have got their Boller. And actually we're going to make two types. We're going to make a plain type, so we're going to make 12. So the recipe I've got here is to make 12, and we're going to make 6 plain Boller, and we're going to make 6 with something extra in. But because we need them light and fluffy, we want a nice strong white flour. So I've got a strong white bread flour here, and the other thing to do to help make them soft and light and fluffy is sort of add some starch mixture to it. So to do that, I've got in here 60 grams of whole milk, and I've got here 25 grams of soft white flour, strong white flour. Bloody hell, I can't speak properly. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to whisk that flour into that milk, and then we're going to put the heat on, and we want to bring it up almost to the boil whilst whisking that, before we then just turn it off and let it cool down to being warm. Now what you should find is it should start to thicken. Okay, I suppose you could potentially use corn flour, but the only problem with corn flour is if you don't cook it out properly, you get that floury, well you do the same with flour, don't you, but you do tend to get that corn floury taste. So this is only, you know, a dinky little amount. Like I say, the original recipe was actually for double what we're doing here, but I'm only making 12. There's only 2 of us. My wife won't really eat that many. She'll probably try one of the plain or one of the chocolate ones. So what I'm saying was, that is starting to thicken, but I think that's partly because there's so little in it on this pan. If you've got a smaller saucepan, it'd probably be easier. Yeah, this is not needing an awful lot of heat at all, to be honest. So just keep your eye on it. Obviously we don't want it burning. So what I'm saying was, it's a milk based sort of bun, bread even. We're going to be using yeast. And like I said, it's sort of traditional to Norway. Now, like I said, they have the plain bollers, but you can add raisins. We're not. They're rosin boller, or you can have, and I can't pronounce this one, something like Hveteboller. They are ones that have been studied with dark chocolate pieces, and that's what we're doing. So I've got some pieces of chocolate. I've got 30 grams of that. Now if you were making 12 of them, you'd want double that, but because I'm going to split my dough into 2 and we're going to make 6 plain and 6 chocolate, I'm only using 30 grams of chocolate. Now you could use raisins. If you were using raisins, again you would use the same amount in weight. There are Hveteboller, and they're ones that are plain usually, but they're normally sort of like twisted into shapes and things like that, knots, braids, that sort of thing. We're not going to try and be that clever. This is definitely thickening now. So I'm just adding a little bit of heat. So like I say, at that point, once it's become thick, and obviously we don't want any lumps in it, so I'm trying to keep it moving, and I think I'm going to turn that heat off now because it has thickened up. I'm just going to give it a final little whisk, and then like I say, we can transfer that to a bowl if you want, or we just put it to one side. The thing is, if you leave it in the pan, just keep your eye on it, because obviously there's a residual heat in the pan. So actually I am going to scrape that out, I think, because I can see that starting to steam. So I'm just going to get in there and I'll finish off telling you about the Boller. So I was saying about the camel boller and how they're shaped. They're also layered with cinnamon and brown sugar to make them that little bit extra special. They have skolbrod, which is basically bollers that have Madagascan vanilla flavoured custard inside, and skolbrod means school buns. So presumably it's what the kids would you give the kids to take to school as a treat. Now in Norway, obviously, because they're up near the Arctic Circle, I think part of it might even be in the Arctic Circle, I don't know, but some of it's pretty damn close. So from about 20th of November through to about 20th of January, they don't get much sun, and so they bake a special type of boller to celebrate the return of the sun. Solboller. They tend to be decorated with custard. I can't get my words out. Custard, and they'll quite often have glazed with icing as well. So anyway, so that's your boller. So we've made our starch mixture. Now we're going to need this in the stand mixer with a dough hook, but before we do that, we're just going to combine some of the other ingredients. What I've got here is ordinary caster sugar, 30 grams of that. I've got 4 grams of fine sea salt. I've got just over 3.5 grams, but I would say just over half a packet of dried yeast. It's going in there. 30 grams of egg. So I took one I took one egg, beat it lightly together, but I tell you, it's a real bugger to get half of that egg weighed out, but there's 30 grams of it. Because the trouble is, you get to a point where one bit comes and it brings the rest of it with it. And then we've got some more milk, and I've got 85 grams again of whole milk, and that's gone in there. And what we're going to do now with that is just beat that together. And then what we've got left to go in there is some more of that strong white flour, 225 grams of that, 30 grams of butter softened, and I've got some cardamom powder, ground cardamom, about a gram of that. We want the cardamom flavour to come through, but it is meant to be sort of lightly. So I put it on my mixer, and I'm adding in that cardamom, and in goes that flour, and then this is where we're going to put our dough hook on, and we're going to do it nice and gentle until we've got a nice smooth dough. Now at that point we'll be adding our butter and our starch mixture. It's thickened up nicely, and we're also going to add to this that softened butter, and that is then all the ingredients that we're going to use for the boller done. We've just got obviously the flavouring, the chocolate. We're going to add one of them, or one set of them. But we'll also need to make up a little egg wash before we put it in the oven. But we're going to mix this up until this is all nicely mixed together and it's formed a nice smooth dough. So that's now all nicely combined. To be honest, it's a bit of a struggle with this quantity. It might have been better making more buns. I had to keep scraping down. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to remove that from the hook, and then I'm just going to scrape it out, form it into a ball. We're going to put it back in there, and then we're going to let it rest and prove for about an hour. We want it to do the classic double in size, and at which point we'll be ready then to form our buns. We'll also be wanting to put the oven on at that point, although we will be proving the buns when we've made them. So you don't necessarily have to do your oven just then. That's had about 2 hours. It's not very warm in here. We've been through a phase of very, very warm days, and now here we are with thunderstorms and everything else going on and not particularly warm. So I've divided that roughly into 2, and I think I'm actually, rather than make 12, given the amount of dough that I've got, what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide each of these up into 4, and all we're going to do at this stage is shape them. So these first 4, these are going to be the plain boller. So I'm just going to shape them round and put them on a tray. Now they should expand a bit, and they should take up a bit more room. Like I say, here, we'll wait and see. So I've got a lightly greased baking tray there, and when I've shaped them all, we're going to cover them over a cloth, and we're then going to allow them time to prove a bit longer, hopefully increase in size. So that's the plain. Let's have a go at the chocolate ones. Once again, I've cut the dough up, but in this case what I'm going to do is flatten it out, and I'm going to take some of them chocolate pieces. Obviously, because I'm not making as many, I probably won't want as much chocolate, and then we're just going to fold that all up, roll that up, so effectively got like a chocolate centre almost, and then just like the others, we're going to put them onto that oil tray, and we're going to give it time to rise. I'll cover it over when I've done them all, and then we'll come back when we're ready to put the oven on, glaze them and put them in the oven. So they've had about an hour, and you can see they've started to rise now. I'll put the oven on at the start of that, and I think that's helped warm it up a little bit in here. Certainly the ones with the chocolate in, I mean that one there's definitely gone. So you can give them all an egg wash, but I'm going to add a little sprinkle of sugar to the chocolate ones, partly to help distinguish which one's which. I'm trying to spill the egg. If you've got peel or pearl sugar, which are like hard lumps of white sugar, you can sprinkle that on it, but I ain't got any, and to be honest I've never actually come across it. Did think about putting a bit of demerara on there, but to be honest I think we'll just have a little pinch of sugar. So our egg wash, we're just going to beat up 1 egg, and what we're going to do is to give it a little bit more of a gloss and everything, is put a pinch of salt in it, and about 1/4 teaspoon of sugar. So I'm just going to beat that into it, and then we're going to wash them over, and like I say, the chocolate ones, the chocolate boller, we're going to add just a little touch of sugar on top, just to help distinguish which one's which. So just simply brush all the top surfaces over, and then we're going to put the oven in, like I said, 180 fan, approximately 15 minutes, just about 16 minutes. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them out, put them on the top, and I'm going to immediately cover them over with the tea towel. That way the sort of steam inside them makes sure that they'll stay soft. Otherwise, if you do them straight out to a rack and don't cover them up, you can put them on a rack. If you do, you're going to need to wrap sort of top and bottom, if you like. So bring them out. You can see they have browned nicely. You can just about make out that these ones have still got the sugar on, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to transfer these onto one, so that I can now just cover them over and we're going to leave them covered over until they've cooled. Now it might be I'll later transfer them into a wire rack when they're cooled a little bit, because obviously we're sitting on this hot tray, they ain't going to cool that quick. But when I do so, and you can actually see the steam coming through, probably that's because my cloth's probably a little bit damp. You can see the heat in it. I will wrap them round to make sure they stay pretty much fully encased in the cloth. So we'll revisit these when they're cold. So like I said, I've transferred them to the wire rack, help them cool down. This one's a little bit misshapen. This is a plain one, so let's just see what it's like. You can see it is very sort of soft. Crust is soft. If you hadn't let it cool down, wrapped up, that crust would have, you know, been crusty. Nice, light, airy, fluffy. You're getting that cardamom through, but not overly so. I get a little saltiness actually, which I know there was quite a lot of salt went into it, but I'm surprised, because other than that it is just like a nice sweet bun. I'm trying to think what kind of bun I've had. Reminds me of. I'm not going to taste the chocolate. I'll save them for later. But this is your Norwegian boller or bowler, and it's very tasty.